The story begins near a railway track, and a green-eyed child sits abandoned inside a closed briefcase. He cries softly and apologizes for being left behind. Soon, a snake goddess approaches and reveals her long tail. She opens the luggage to look inside. Seeing him cast aside, she points out his bad luck to be found by someone like her. He nervously asks who she is. She reassures him and explains that returning to his past life is impossible. Wrapping her tail gently around him, she lifts him up. She comforts him and instructs him to bid a final farewell to the human world. Rather than causing harm, she joyfully decides to adopt him. Long ago, an ancient custom existed on the mountain overlooking the town. People offered sacrifices to her to ensure prosperity. Despite her terrifying reputation, she genuinely loved raising them. Now, a century later, she holds her discovery. She claims him as her first gift in 100 years. She vows to protect him and promises they will share a happy life together forever. She cries while looking at him, feeling incredibly lonely. He is completely terrified and refuses to speak. She tells him to call her any maternal name he prefers. He remains frozen in fear, so she begs him to say something. He just cries. She smiles, trying to prove she is harmless, and encourages him to address her. However, her joyful expression only terrifies him more. She cradles him, expressing her deep affection and jokingly claiming she could just eat him up. Taking her words literally, he panics. She frantically apologizes, explaining it is only a harmless figure of speech. His trembling continues as her attempts to soothe him fail. She quickly clarifies that she has never actually consumed anyone before. She promises to cherish him and declares that his life now belongs entirely to her. Overwhelmed by her intense delivery, he immediately passes out. She innocently wonders if he is just taking a nap. Later, she places him on a bed, checking to make sure he is breathing. She admires his sleeping face and assumes he is simply exhausted. She wonders how anyone could be cruel enough to abandon someone so lovely. Lying beside him, she vows never to let him go. A few hours later, she falls asleep. Her reflexes accidentally act up, and she unwittingly wraps her jaws around him. Waking up in a sudden panic, she thinks he has completely vanished. She eventually realizes he is resting safely right inside her mouth, proving her new parenting skills are still a bit clumsy. The following day, she finds him hiding and gently tries to coax him out. She invites him to take a bath with her, but he flatly refuses. Hearing this, she cries tears of pure despair, terrified that their relationship is already ruined. She frantically asks if he hates her because she accidentally put him in her mouth earlier. She desperately begs him to believe that she does not eat people and truly loves him. Hearing a single word in reply, she concludes that he just hates bath itself. Relieved, she asks what exactly bothers him about bathing. He points to his eyes, so she understands that he hates getting soap in his eyes. To solve this, she excitedly presents a special shampoo hat to protect his face. She places it on his head and instructs him to raise his arms to take his clothes off. He obeys, but the wide brim of the hat makes it completely impossible to pull his shirt over his head. Later, once they are finally in the water, she asks if the temperature is comfortable. He expresses surprise, having never experienced warm water before. Shocked that he is used to taking freezing baths, she vows to make this the best experience ever. She steps out to manually heat the water further, shivering in the cold air while her heart burns with passionate dedication to her new parenting duties. Back in the tub, she suggests soaking up to their shoulders while counting to 10. She asks if he knows his numbers. He responds by earnestly counting on his little fingers. Watching him, she is completely overwhelmed by how adorable he is. He continues counting all the way up to 100. She watches, completely mesmerized by his abilities. She praises him, wondering if he is some kind of genius for already knowing 3-digit numbers. He bravely keeps counting past 900. As the numbers climb higher, she remains patiently submerged in the tub with him. She stays in the hot water for so long that she begins to feel dizzy and her skin prunes up. Eventually, it is time to get out. She suggests they leave the water, but he immediately refuses. At first, she panics and starts crying, fearing he is upset with her again. However, she quickly realizes he simply wants to stay in the bath a little longer with her. This realization moves her to shed overwhelming tears of pure joy. Afterward, she dries his hair with a hairdryer. As she works, she begins to worry about the future. She silently laments that he will grow up fast and eventually refuse to spend this time with her. The bittersweet thought causes her to burst into tears once again. Even though his eyes remained perfectly safe from the soap, her own eyes constantly sting from weeping so much. The next day, his stomach growls loudly from hunger. Hearing it, she playfully glares at him and dramatically declares war on his empty stomach. She heads to the kitchen, proudly claiming she has mastered home cooking through generations of family tradition. Treating the meal like an important mission, she confidently says she can cook anything he wants. But the moment she opens the refrigerator, she panics. She suddenly remembers that she ate almost all the groceries the previous day during one of her monthly energy-storing eating sessions. Embarrassed, she laments that all her power means nothing without ingredients. Using the few items left, mainly eggs, she desperately tries to make something edible and asks if he likes omurice. The moment he excitedly says yes, her eyes light up with joy. Overwhelmed with happiness, she silently thanks whoever invented the dish and immediately starts cooking, determined to pour all her love into it. She tells him to wait safely in the living room while she handles the stove. While cooking, she worries he might dislike the lack of meat. Glancing at her tail, she casually remembers that humans sometimes eat her kind and notes that they apparently taste like chicken. Once the omurice is ready, she proudly serves it to him and eagerly waits for his reaction. As he keeps nodding while eating, she realizes he genuinely loves it and laughs in relief, happy that he enjoys her cooking. After he finishes, she praises him for eating so well. She explains that breakfast and lunch became one meal because the day was hectic, but promises to put her full effort into dinner too. When she asks what he wants later, he looks confused at the idea of eating again. Shocked, she realizes he is used to eating only once a day. She quickly explains that normal people eat 3 meals daily, plus snacks. That night, she serves him a huge hamburger and happily encourages him to eat as much as he wants, promising there is plenty more. She gently pats him and tells him to ask for seconds anytime. After finishing everything on his plate, he happily hands it back and asks for another serving. She becomes incredibly excited to give him more food, overflowing with joy while he finally fills his constantly empty stomach. Later that night, she notices one of the buttons missing from his clothes and becomes deeply upset by how worn out his outfit looks. Bursting into tears, she demands to know why he hid it from her and dramatically assumes he is testing her love. She even begs him not to leave her just because she failed to notice his damaged clothes sooner. Meanwhile, he sits there completely terrified by her intense emotional reaction, even though she is simply worried about him. She carefully sews the button back on and helps him change clothes. While examining the outfit, she notices how old and torn the fabric has become and asks if it is his favorite outfit. When he quietly admits it is his only one, she is completely shocked. Determined to fix the problem immediately, she declares that she will make him an entirely new wardrobe. To gather materials, she goes outside and summons magical rain, hoping the blessed downpour will help plants grow quickly for fabric making. Unfortunately, the sudden humidity triggers her natural molting process. While shedding her old skin, she quickly becomes exhausted and dehydrated. Seeing her struggle, he rushes over and pours water on her, instantly helping her recover. Using the magical skin she shed, she then creates beautiful, high-quality clothes for him. While admiring the finished outfits, she happily talks about making future festival clothes and special embroidered outfits for him someday. But then a painful thought suddenly hits her. Because she will live far longer than him, she realizes she may one day have to sew his final burial clothes too. The realization completely breaks her heart. Soon after, she proudly presents several new outfits and especially recommends one made from her magical shed fabric. However, the intense snake pattern design completely overwhelms him, so he quickly chooses a plain outfit instead. The moment he puts it on, she completely loses control and starts freaking out over how adorable he looks. She becomes so overwhelmed by his appearance that she nearly forgets her own terrifying power and status. Later, she carefully packs away the remaining outfits and excitedly suggests showing his new look to the mountain animals. But instead, he reaches for his old worn-out clothes again. Thinking he hates her handmade outfits, she instantly panics. He quickly explains that he simply does not want the beautiful new clothes to get dirty. His innocent answer melts her heart immediately, and the unused outfits end up being carefully stored away like treasured collectibles instead of everyday clothing. Another morning, she leads him outside to reveal a massive, elaborate playground she built herself. She explains that she spent the last century playing here with an imaginary companion, enduring all kinds of weather entirely alone. Now, she excitedly gifts the entire park to him, thrilled to finally play with someone real forever. She notices him wandering aimlessly and deduces that he has never played in a park before. Treating this as a historic debut, she promises to guide him through every single activity. First, they visit the swings. She demonstrates how to sit and sway back and forth by crossing her lower body. However, because she uses her long tail, her wild movements completely horrify him. Due to their extreme physical differences, he cannot replicate her actions at all. Next, they move to the slide. She shows him how to propel himself by grabbing the poles with her tail, an impossible feat for his short legs. Moving to the monkey bars, she casually hangs upside down using her tail for support while his legs helplessly dangle in the air. Seeing him struggle with every ride, she genuinely questions her own teaching abilities, completely oblivious to the fact that their biological differences are the real issue. Determined to succeed, she asks for one final chance at the sandbox. She instructs him to pack the dirt with all his strength and gently polish the edges. She proudly shows off a perfectly shiny mud ball. To her surprise, he easily creates an identical sphere. She happily assumes her teaching finally worked, but in reality, he is simply naturally skilled. When it is time to clean up and leave, he immediately heads for the exit without a fuss. She worries that he hated the trip, assuming he would normally throw a tantrum about leaving if he actually had fun. Later, back at the house, they prepare to wash their hands. Knowing their fragile mud balls will easily dissolve in the water, she carefully stores their shiny creations in a protective display case instead. The following morning during breakfast, she suddenly realizes she does not know what to call him. She asks what the people at his previous home called him. He sadly replies that he was only referred to as names like trash and a nuisance. Horrified by this cruelty, she vows to give him a proper, loving name immediately. Shortly after, she prepares a bucket of ink, grabs a massive paintbrush, and rolls out a long sheet of paper on the floor. She excitedly announces that his official naming ceremony has begun. Wanting to give him the best title ever, she mentions studying recent naming trends. She suggests the trendy name Ouroboros, referencing the mythological serpent that eats its own tail. However, he is completely confused by the complicated word. Realizing it is too difficult for him to understand, she quickly abandons the idea. Determined to do better, she decides to rely on her own feelings rather than fleeting trends. She wants a name that will embrace his past misfortunes and bless his future. She begins frantically painting characters representing happiness, health, freedom, and longevity. Overwhelmed with passionate emotion, she cannot stop writing until the title becomes a massive, rambling paragraph rather than a single word. As she writes, he grows bored and yawns. Looking at the incredibly long sentence, she suddenly panics. She realizes that a sentence naturally has a beginning and an end, but her love for him is completely endless. Confused by her own overthinking, she asks for his opinion, only to find that he has fallen fast asleep. Seeing his adorable sleeping face, she experiences a brilliant epiphany. She takes the long strip of paper and connects the beginning to the end, forming a continuous circle just like an Ouroboros. By combining the connected characters from the start and finish, she successfully crafts the simple, beautiful name Miharu. He wakes up and genuinely seems to like it. Overjoyed, she proudly declares his new name and excitedly prepares to celebrate. A little while later, she excitedly calls out for Miharu. She finds him staring intently at the television in complete silence. Her intense love for her newly named family member is obvious, as she has proudly written his name all over the walls of the room. She asks what he is watching so seriously and wonders why the television is completely muted. After thinking for a moment, he expresses fear that she will get angry. She deduces the noise used to make his previous caretakers mad. Heartbroken by this, she gently reassures him that he can turn the volume up as high as he wants without her ever getting upset. Feeling empowered, she excitedly cranks the volume so high that it hurts their ears, quickly forcing her to lower it back to a reasonable level. On the screen, a popular children's host named Spell warmly greets her audience. She encourages Miharu not to be shy and to talk back to the screen. To her surprise, he bravely answers the host, exchanging greetings and eagerly agreeing to play along. Watching this, she suddenly realizes he speaks much more easily to the television than he does to her. She feels deeply insecure about her own communication skills, and a burning flame of jealousy ignites. She dramatically views the television host as a grave sinner for stealing his attention. When the host announces a dance segment, he becomes incredibly excited. Boiling with jealousy, she desperately wants to turn off the television, but decides to let it slide solely because he is having fun. However, the host then invites the viewers to call their parents into the room to dance together. Hearing this, her attitude does a complete 180-degree turn. Thrilled to be included as his family, she excitedly rushes to his side. They begin dancing along with the broadcast. The routine involves holding hands and hugging, but due to her massive magical strength, her hand-holding feels like an iron handcuff, and her hug resembles a wrestling move. Her intense affection makes every clumsy touch overwhelmingly powerful. After the dance, the host leaves the audience with a final quiz question about the largest sea creature in the world, telling them to tune in tomorrow for the answer. The broadcast ends, and he immediately looks directly at her for the solution. Panicking because she does not actually know the answer, she vows to look it up immediately. Thrilled that he is finally relying on her, she spends the next few hours frantically mastering the English language to impress him with her vast knowledge. The following morning, she enthusiastically greets him entirely in English, asking how her sweet boy is doing today. To her absolute shock, he casually responds back in perfect English, politely asking how she is doing in return. Completely overwhelmed and moved by his fluent response, she instantly forgets all the English she just spent hours learning. Later that night, she sneaks up to Miharu's door, wondering if he is still awake. Hoping he is finally getting used to her, she quietly opens the door to tuck him in. She immediately panics when she sees his bed is completely empty. After a frantic search, she discovers him sleeping inside the cramped cupboard. She wonders why he is avoiding the comfortable bed. He hesitantly asks if he is actually allowed to use it. Shocked, she questions what kind of sleeping arrangement he had at his previous home. He quietly reveals he only ever slept on the bare floor. Heartbroken, she gently guides him to the fluffy mattress. He crawls onto the incredibly soft bed, immediately sinking into the plush material. She deeply regrets not checking on him sooner. She admits she had actively avoided his room at night because she was terrified of accidentally sleepwalking and swallowing him again. She advises him to sleep safely with his stuffed toy, but he nervously tugs on her shirt, silently asking her to stay with him. Overjoyed that he chose her, she excitedly tells him to wait while she prepares. A minute later, she returns. To prevent any sleep-related accidents, she wraps herself tightly in thick blankets from head to toe and wears a large sleep mask over her face. She proudly says it is now completely safe for them to sleep together, not realizing how strange and scary she looks. He cautiously lies down beside her. An hour later, he is still wide awake and trembling in fear. Noticing his tension, she breaks free from her heavy blankets. She mistakenly assumes he is just nervous about the unfamiliar fluffy bed, completely unaware that her bizarre outfit is the actual source of his terror. To help him relax, she decides to try a modern sleep trend called ASMR. She gathers various household items and begins pouring sparkling water into a bowl. However, she enthusiastically creates so many different noises at once that it just becomes a chaotic, noisy racket. He remains wide awake. Giving up on modern trends, she resorts to a traditional lullaby. She gently rubs his tummy and pats his head while singing a song about a great mountain spirit coiling around her family to hide them away. The lyrics are actually quite ominous, but her gentle touch finally works, and he falls fast asleep. Relieved, she decides to go to sleep as well. The next morning, he wakes up to a startling sight. She has once again wrapped herself tightly. Seeing his pale, shocked expression, she quickly frees herself and cheerfully asks if he had a nightmare, completely oblivious that her ridiculous sleeping form is the actual nightmare right in front of him. Later, a massive shout echoes through the house. She furiously yells, threatening never to forgive whoever caused such a terrible mess. She aggressively grabs his shirt, but she is actually screaming directly at a soy sauce stain. He accidentally spilled the sauce on himself, and she completely blames herself for leaving the bottle where he could reach it. Overwhelmed with guilt, she apologizes profusely for her carelessness. Assuming his quiet reaction means he hates her, she dramatically grabs a knife, theatrically offering to end her own life as punishment. He quickly stops her dramatic outburst. Relieved, she begs for permission to wash the garments. When he acts confused by the concept, she heartbrokenly realizes his clothes have never been washed before. She vows to return them sparkling clean and excitedly demonstrates her unique laundry process. To begin, she places the clothes in her mouth, explaining that a special cleaning fluid from her fangs safely breaks down the dirt. Next, she gently scrubs the fabric against her tough scales. For the drying phase, she wraps the wet clothes tightly around her tail, using her massive constricting force to wring out all the water effortlessly. Finally, she hangs the garments on a line to dry. Once dry, the clothes look completely pristine. She proudly presents them to Miharu and asks if she is finally forgiven. He nods quickly, prompting her to express dramatic relief that she no longer has to punish herself. She happily folds the garments and puts them away. Overjoyed to finally have clean clothes, he affectionately rubs the soft fabric against his face. Overcome with intense emotion at his adorable reaction, she lunges forward to give him a massive hug. Unfortunately, she bursts into messy tears of joy, completely soaking the clothes and sending her laundry progress right back to square one. A few weeks later, they watch a television broadcast announcing that the popular host is holding a live event at a nearby mall. She notices him staring intently at the screen. She asks if he wants to go, but he immediately shakes his head. Seeing through his hesitation, she realizes he actually desperately wants to attend. Thrilled that he is finally showing curiosity about the outside world, she decides to seize the opportunity. She casually mentions she has errands at that exact mall and asks where he wants to go. After a moment of hesitation, he bravely admits he wants to see the TV host. He nervously asks if he is being too selfish. She reassures him that it is not selfish at all, promising to stay by his side forever, wherever he wants to go. To attend, she must win an online ticket lottery. She frantically fills out the application on her phone, treating the fierce competition as a serious battle she cannot afford to lose. On the day the results are announced, she waits in agonizing suspense. She endlessly refreshes the page, consumed by anxiety over failing him, terrified that he will hate her if they lose. Her overwhelming stress causes her to accidentally transform entirely into her massive snake form. When the page finally loads, she completely loses her composure and begins thrashing around in a panic. Miharu bravely steps forward to hold her steady and properly reads the screen, revealing that they actually won. She excitedly scoops him into a massive hug, thrilled that they can attend together. More than the tickets, he is just incredibly relieved to see her finally calm down. A few days later, they arrive at the bustling venue, fully participating in the lively event. Wrapping her tail protectively around him, she proudly tells him how special he is, completely confident that he will catch the host's eye in the massive crowd. She points toward the stage, excitedly showing him that his favorite television star is finally right in front of them. Back at the live event, she encourages him to step forward and join the other participants. She dramatically tells him to go forth without looking back, which briefly terrifies him. However, the television host notices his special snake hoodie and warmly invites him to join the main group. She urges him to leave the parents' seating section so he does not miss out. Misunderstanding her encouragement, he panics and begs her not to leave him behind. Heartbroken by his fear, she tightly embraces him, dramatically vowing to wait for him forever. Reassured, Miharu bravely approaches the stage. The host warmly greets him and asks for his name. Watching from the audience, she worries about his social anxiety, but to her immense joy, he confidently introduces himself. The host then instructs the audience to pair up for an exercise routine. Initially, he stands alone, causing her to worry again. Fortunately, the host kindly steps in to partner with him. As the host hugs and jumps around with him, a fierce wave of jealousy washes over her. She desperately wants to intervene, but she physically restrains herself, forcing herself to endure the jealousy solely so he can have fun. When the broadcast concludes, the host asks the audience to wave at the cameras. Looking back at the audience, he catches her awkwardly muffling her own overwhelmed, jealous screams to avoid ruining the live recording. After the show, the host announces a commemorative photo session and calls for his guardian to step forward. She freezes in fear, terrified that if she steps up and he rejects her in public, she will die of heartbreak. Without hesitation, he turns around and proudly points directly at her. Completely overjoyed by this undeniable public acceptance, she excitedly rushes forward to claim him. As they pose for the photo, she attempts to comfort his nerves, but he unexpectedly reaches out and tightly grips her finger. The sudden, adorable gesture completely overwhelms her, leaving her trembling with absolute joy as the camera flashes. As the event wraps up, Miharu becomes completely silent, while wrapped safely in her tail. Assuming he has finally run out of energy, she gently encourages him to rest peacefully until they get home. The announcer officially concludes the live show. While he is completely exhausted, she remains full of limitless energy. She prepares to head home quickly so he can rest. However, he reminds her of the urgent errands she previously claimed to have at the mall. She cheerfully admits that seeing him look so cute was her only real business, adding that there is still plenty of fun waiting for them back at the house. Shortly after, at the train station, she frantically rushes toward the platform. Ignoring the overhead announcements to refrain from running, she violently squeezes herself through the closing train doors. She feels incredibly relieved that he is still fast asleep, completely ignoring the fact that her massive, terrifying appearance is heavily frightening everyone else on board. Taking a seat, she happily gazes at his sleeping face. Suddenly, his eyes snap open in sheer panic. He fearfully explains that he must stay awake or he will be ruthlessly scolded. Heartbroken by his past trauma, she gently reassures him that no one will ever get mad at him for being tired. She promises to stay awake and carefully watch over him until they reach their station. Despite her confident promise, she accidentally falls fast asleep alongside him. They end up missing their stop entirely and wake up at the final destination at the end of the line. Realizing there are no more trains available, she panics and profusely apologizes for ruining their perfect day. Eventually, they manage to navigate a bus route back to their area. Once off the bus, she sprints the rest of the way to the house at an incredible speed, frantically worrying that they have completely missed dinner time. She feels deeply guilty, believing she has left him with terrible memories of the trip. Breaking the silence, he reaches out his hand and earnestly thanks her for the wonderful day. His unexpected gratitude instantly saves her from her spiraling guilt. Arriving back at the house, she happily announces their return. However, someone unexpectedly replies from inside. An unfamiliar voice aggressively scolds her for leaving the mountain and demands to know where she found Miharu. Shocked and deeply intimidated by the sudden confrontation, she flinches and quickly hides him safely behind her back. Inside the house, they are confronted by a 17-year-old girl named Yui. Panicking, she immediately assumes the teenager is here to tear Miharu away from her. Terrified of being lonely again, she tightly holds him. Yui attempts to de-escalate the situation, suggesting they just talk things through. Refusing to be fooled, she frantically denies finding him abandoned, accidentally blurting out the exact truth in the process. Yui quickly catches her in the obvious lie. She fiercely accuses Yui of setting a trap, but Yui plainly points out that she simply listened while the other willingly confessed everything. When she stubbornly refuses to hand him over, Yui threatens to call the authorities. Desperate to keep him, she tugs on Yui's clothes, dramatically claiming to have met him after 100 years of agonizing confinement. Unfazed, Yui bluntly corrects her, pointing out that she was actually only confined for a single week as punishment for bothering visitors. Realizing her immense, agonizing isolation was only 7 days long, she bursts into dramatic tears, promising to break out of prison and come back for Miharu. Showing absolutely no mercy, Yui clarifies that she merely reported finding an abandoned youth to the authorities, adding that an arrest is still entirely possible depending on the upcoming questioning. She emotionally declares herself as his mother, but Yui logically questions the status of his official paperwork. Since no legal adoption forms have been filed, Yui coldly states that he does not belong to her yet. Her mind completely breaks at this realization. Feeling like an absolute nobody, she faints in pure despair. Feeling slightly sympathetic, Yui points out that she can simply file the paperwork to become a legal mother moving forward, noting how deeply he already trusts her. However, Yui decides to move in with them temporarily to strictly evaluate her parenting skills firsthand. Feeling completely defeated and overwhelmed, she finally apologizes for her past behavior, completely surrendering to the teenager's strict authority. The next morning, Miharu wakes up to the sound of muttered voices outside his room. Peeking out, he overhears Shiratsuya arguing about eating soft, fresh meat, dramatically claiming it is her ultimate pleasure. Noticing him standing there, she excitedly announces that they were just talking about him. She leans in and complains that Yui is trying to throw away her special home-cooked meal. Holding the confiscated magical meat, Yui firmly declares that eating it is completely unethical. Shiratsuya argues that Miharu found the dish delicious, but Yui bluntly counters that he only liked it because he did not know what it actually was. Sitting down together, Yui apologizes for the morning commotion and formally introduces herself to Miharu. Shiratsuya bitterly confirms the new living arrangement, complaining that the teenager is a terrifying watchdog who steals her precious belongings. During the introduction, Yui casually mentions the deity's real name. Hearing this, he curiously repeats the unfamiliar name, Shiratsuya. She quickly interrupts, demanding that he just call her Mama instead. However, Yui sharply points out that he has never actually called her that. Yui severely scolds her for trying to force the maternal title without ever properly introducing herself, especially considering his traumatic past. Realizing her total lack of consideration, Shiratsuya humbly apologizes. Afterward, given the freedom to choose his own terms, Miharu addresses the teenager casually as Yui-chan, but addresses the deity formally as Shiratsuya-sama. Hearing this, she immediately freaks out, incredibly jealous that Yui gets a cute, casual nickname while she gets a stiff, formal title. Yui smugly points out that this was entirely his own choice. To test the waters, he begins repeating Shiratsuya's formal name over and over. Despite her initial jealousy, hearing his adorable voice repeatedly say her name completely melts her heart with joy. Watching this, Yui feels slightly melancholic. She notes that Shiratsuya never gets that happy when she says her name, even though she also cares for her deeply. However, Yui figures it cannot be helped since she is always scolding her. Noticing Yui's slight sadness, he secretly whispers a plan into the teenager's ear. Suddenly, both of them start chanting Shiratsuya's name in perfect unison. She becomes completely baffled by the synchronized chanting, frantically wondering if it is some sort of bizarre prayer or curse. Yui laughs, realizing the trick does not have the same magical effect when she joins in. Ultimately, the chaotic morning proves that Miharu now has a highly reliable second guardian looking out for him.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.